Tonight at 10, the UK records more COVID infections in a single day than at any time since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. The fear is the NHS could be overwhelmed as the new Omicron variant spreads at a phenomenal pace. So, a warning over Christmas get-togethers from England's chief medical officer: avoid unnecessary gatherings.
I really think people should be prioritising those things and only those things that really matter to them.
Record numbers of people get their booster jabs, but the new variant is doubling infections every 2 days.
It's probably the most significant threat we've had since the start of the pandemic, and I'm sure, for example, that the numbers that we see on data over the next few days will be quite staggering.
We'll have the very latest also tonight. The cost of living is rising, with latest inflation figures at their highest rate for a decade. A life sentence for the murderer of 16-month-old star Hobson. The toddler suffered catastrophic injuries at the hands of her killer. And a rise Sir Lewis Hamilton as the Formula One star is knighted for services to motorsport.
And coming up in sport on the BBC News channel.
Good evening. The UK has recorded its highest number of daily COVID infections since the start of the coronavirus pandemic almost 2 years ago. There were more than 78,500 new cases in the past 24 hours. That's 10,000 more than the previous daily record set back in January. But England's Chief Medical Officer, Professor Chris Whitty, has warned that more COVID records will be broken, with the Omicron variant moving at what he called an absolutely phenomenal pace. He added that the public should prioritise what matters with regards to social mixing in the run-up to Christmas. Boris Johnson has again urged people to get their booster jabs as part of what he called the great national fight back against the Omicron variant. With the very latest, here's our political editor, Laura Koonsberg.
Are we staring down the barrel of a terrible outbreak of the virus? Are we looking at the signs of impossible pressure for the NHS? Is the Prime Minister watching out of control that his authority and credibility fall away?
Is the party over for you now, Prime Minister?
With record cases, Boris Johnson eager to emphasise again what he says you must do.
The wave of Omicron continues to roll in across the whole of our United Kingdom. We are throwing everything at it, and wherever you are, we'll be there with a jab for you. So please, get boosted now.
This is a really serious threat at the moment. How big a threat? There are several things we don't know, but all the things that we do know are bad. And the principal one being the speed at which this is moving. It is moving at an absolutely phenomenal pace.
Demand for the boosters surged since Sunday, but so has the variant. More cases recorded today than at any point during the whole pandemic, as jabs go in arms in surgeries, car parks, even cathedrals. The fear, the sheer number, will cause intolerable disruption. And could there be more limits on our lives?
There have been more cases today than there ever have been. If now isn't the time for extra restrictions, when will be?
The booster does provide an excellent level of protection, and we think that given the balance of risks and the balance of continuing uncertainties about Omicron, this is the right approach to take.
And to both of the medics, can I ask you really straightforwardly, do you think it would be better if there were now more restrictions immediately?
I think that what most people are doing is, and I would think this seems very sensible, is prioritising the social interactions that really matter to them, and to protect those ones, deprioritising ones that matter much less to them. And I think that's going to become increasingly important as we, for example, go into the Christmas period.
The country's top doctor at pains several times to say, unless it really matters to you, stay at home. But Boris Johnson doesn't want to close the doors of pubs, clubs or restaurants, and perhaps wouldn't have the authority to if he tried, because last night he was pounded by his own side. 100 Tory MPs rejecting COVID passes, and proud. one of them even filming herself casting their vote against. The plans only passed, embarrassingly for Boris Johnson, with help from Labour, a point too tempting for Keir Starmer to ignore earlier today.
If it wasn't for Labour votes, his government wouldn't have been able to introduce vital health measures we need to save lives and protect the NHS. So weak is his leadership.
We vaccinate, they vacillate. They jabber, we jab.
Yet the government, and we all, are grappling again with a fast-moving crisis. But the Tories can be accused of having to deal with their own mistakes rather than what matters. With the risk from the virus to our health and wealth, any wrong move could have a terrible cost. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Downing Street.
Well, let's take a look at the latest COVID figures in detail. And there were 78,610 new cases in the latest 24-hour period. That's 10,000 more than the previous record for a single day on the 8th of January. On average, 57,838 new infections were reported every day in the past week. The number of people in hospital with COVID now stands at 7,673. There were 165 deaths recorded, thus of people who died within 28 days of a positive test, which means 115 COVID-related deaths were recorded on average every day in the past week. On vaccinations, almost 657,000 people had their booster jab yesterday, which is a record, bringing the average to just over 490,000 a day in the past 7 days. More than 24,700,000 people have now had a booster jab. Well, with his assessment of the significance of the latest figures, here's our health editor, Hugh Pym.
With the rapid spread of the new variant, the booster programme has been given new urgency. Here, a GP in Oxford visits elderly patients in their homes to give them the top-up jab.
But it will give you very good protection and boost your immunity.
With evidence of that good protection against Omicron infection, the booster rollout will continue. But according to recent research, there's much less of a shield a few months after a second dose, and there's high-level concern about how much case numbers could rise.
It's probably the most significant threat we've had since the start of the pandemic. And I'm sure, for example, that the numbers that we see on data over the next few days will be quite staggering compared to the rate of growth that we've seen in cases for previous variants.
Even if most of the extra cases are mild, that could result in more staff absences from key sectors of the economy and public services. And while Omicron may cause less serious illness than Delta, a surge in cases would mean at least some extra hospital admissions. One group of modellers has come up with a range of scenarios depending on what happens with the virus and the take-up of boosters. They say in the worst-case scenario in England, there could be more than 6,000 hospital admissions a day, compared with just under 4,000 at the peak last winter. In the best case, they say it would be around 2,000 admissions a day in England. And all of that assumes that previously announced restrictions haven't been changed. So there are serious challenges for the NHS across the UK. Any rise in COVID numbers will increase pressure already felt in crowded A&E departments, including this one in Edinburgh. The Scottish Government has urged people to limit social contacts in the run-up to Christmas. There have been renewed appeals, meanwhile, for volunteers to join the vaccination effort in England, and a message to the public: we need your help.
Get tested when you're asked to and follow the government guidelines. Make sure that you focus on getting your booster if you haven't already. And if you're able to, come forward and join this fight against Omicron. Because I promise you, if you can come and help us, our NHS will be here for you.
Some restaurants say the public have been voting with their feet and cancelling bookings. This celebrity chef said he'd lost 650 reservations.
It's going to be working out how we survive, how we get through, where are the losses, where are the gaps, how do we fill them? And the bigger picture for hospitality is the government needs to look at the huge catastrophic losses that this industry is making.
The picture seems bleaker, but vaccine coverage is much more widespread than in the January wave. Deaths for now are a lot lower, and there are more therapies for COVID patients. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Well, our medical editor Fergus Walsh is here. The numbers are truly mind-boggling. Infections doubling, every 2 or so days, but record numbers of booster jabs. So Are we winning this battle? Who's winning this race?
Well, we're only just starting to see the impact of Omicron on the numbers, Clive, and it is spreading extraordinarily fast through a highly vaccinated population because it is so highly contagious. Only a booster can stop your chances really now of being infected. And I think we should prepare for astonishingly high numbers in the days ahead. The graphs are going to have to be changed to fit the case numbers in because they're going so high on the chart. And I think we'll see several multiples, even of the record numbers we've seen today. That's perfectly possible. Now, that all sounds scary, but in many ways, we're in a much better position than we were this time last year. For example, hospital admissions for the over 85s, the most vulnerable group, are 9 times lower now than they were in January. And that is because vaccines, 2 doses, give very strong protection, more than 90% against severe disease with the Delta variant. The big unknown is how much protection will hold up against Omicron with 2 doses or with that booster. Now, even if the vast majority of cases are mild, if we have huge numbers, a small drop in protection could lead to a big impact on an already stretched NHS, and most of that impact will come after Christmas in the deep of winter.
Now, we're all wondering, all of us are thinking, well, what can we do over Christmas? What are the rules governing get-togethers and family gatherings and so on?
Well, Chris Whitty was very clear today in the press conference, and he said he recommended that people prioritise what matters to them. And he said, don't mix with people you don't have to. The Prime Minister said he would not be shutting hospitality, he would not be cancelling events, but he said people should be cautious. Wash your hands, do regular lateral flow tests, make sure places are ventilated. Yesterday, the Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, asked people in Scotland to limit socialising to 3 households, but that's guidance only. But if these numbers keep rising, Clive, and more pressure builds on the NHS, then talk of more restrictions will get louder.
Sure. OK, Fergus, thank you. Fergus Walsh, our medical editor there. And it's been announced that the former High Court judge, Baroness Hallett, will chair the COVID inquiry into the government's handling of the pandemic. The crossbench peer presided over the inquest into the deaths from the 7/7 terror attacks. Bereaved relatives who lost family members during the pandemic have urged Baroness Hallett to put them at the heart of her inquiry, which is due to begin next spring. Well, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland already have COVID passports, and from today, all adults in England must prove they're now fully vaccinated or have a negative COVID test within the last 48 hours to get into large venues such as nightclubs and stadiums. Proof can be in the form of an NHS COVID pass or a text or email from NHS Test and Trace. Entry to indoor unseated venues with more than 500 people, outdoor unseated venues with more than 4,000 people or any venue with more than 10,000 people will also require proof of vaccination or a negative test. With more on this, our correspondent Andrew Plant reports now from Bristol.
Proof of vaccinations or negative tests now needed all across England today. Football fans at the Emirates tonight, some of the first to be affected.
Got my COVID pass, got the lateral flow negative test.
We had an email from the venue to say get here early, about 6:30, but we just thought actually it could take a long time to check everyone.
I'm quite old and I want to know that I'm safe in there, so I've got my COVID passport here, all ready to show.
So that you just click on that, click domestic.
Preparing their COVID passes over a pint this evening.
And all you do is just 2 clicks on the app. Easy as.
These friends getting ready to head to a nightclub later.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's just like showing your ID to get into somewhere, isn't it, really?
You feel a lot safer going out knowing that everyone else there is healthy and doesn't have COVID.
For everyone's mental health, we need to stay out of lockdown as long as possible, and with these new restrictions, with tests and stuff, it's making everything safer and better for everyone.
After being closed for almost 18 months, this nightclub reopened in August.
It's a whole new scenario for us.
Concerns here, though, that some will find the new entry rules confusing.
And I think a lot of people are going to be unaware that they need to show anything, or perhaps they haven't got the right format in which to show it. What about people who don't have a mobile phone? What about people who don't access the NHS app? Do we, alienate them and turn them away because they don't have access to that technology?
Some entertainment venues have recently reported sharp drops in their bookings, blaming people's fears over the Omicron variant and not wanting to have their Christmas plans disrupted. Many, though, are hoping this new COVID pass scheme might give people a bit more confidence about going to big, busy places over the next few weeks.
After months with almost no income, many were relying on a bumper Christmas and say more government help could be needed.
We've got the VAT relief extended until April 2022, where it's at 12.5%, and at which point it goes back up to 20%. We would ask that that is extended.
Checking COVID passes now the norm for many venues, hoping it's enough to keep people coming in. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
The cost of living has risen at its fastest rate for 10 years, with inflation at 5.1% last month. The Office for National Statistics says the rise is due to a surge in transport and energy costs. Here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
It's not just here in Cardiff that inflation is reaching ever dizzier heights. Across the nation, prices are rising at their fastest rate in a decade, driven by record petrol prices, massive spikes in gas and electricity, and now clothing and food price rises too, raising questions about how quickly it will come down to earth. The official rate of inflation reached 5.1% in November, the highest level since 2011, and well over double the rate targeted by the Bank of England. The older unofficial retail price index measure, still used by some government departments and to set some bills, reached 7.1%, the highest level in over 30 years. This reflects the everyday experience of those at the Cardiff Christmas market, with widespread price pressures and now uncertainty over the spread of the variant.
Food have gone up, travel has gone up, everything to do with everyday living, really. So people are still buying, but I think they're considering it more carefully.
Importing my cheese has gone up, and lots of other things like diesel at the moment as well. It's just increasing in the cost. But I think because we've had such a long time locked down, people have got a little bit more spare money.
If, as we fear, there may be some further social restrictions, what do you think that's doing to consumer confidence?
I would imagine it'll kill it off.
That same uncertainty affects the decision makers at the Bank of England, pondering whether to raise interest rates tomorrow. Significant price rises are with us for months to come. Just how many months depends on whether price rises lead to wage rises and then further price rises, a kind of spiral. But the fact that unemployment did not rise after the end of the furlough scheme means the Bank of England thinks it has the green light to start raising interest rates slowly. That could come tomorrow, but because of the Omicron variant, it could also be delayed until February. But it's energy prices that will continue to rise into next year, affecting those on fixed incomes, such as Chrissy, a pensioner in Somerset, whose bills have gone from £1,000 a year to over £2,000.
Just incredibly worrying, because you don't know where it's going to end. You know, how much more is it all going up? It is mainly energy.
But there's other things too.
Petrol, yes, at a ridiculous price.
With taxes up, bills up further and interest rates up too, it's going to be a tricky balancing act for many households this winter. Faisal Islam, BBC News in Cardiff.
The woman who murdered 16-month-old Star Hobson after inflicting utterly catastrophic injuries on the toddler has been given a life sentence. Savannah Brockhill, who's 28, has been jailed for a minimum of 25 years, while the little girl's mother, Frankie Smith, has been given 8 years in prison for causing or allowing her daughter's death. A warning, this report from Danny Savage contains some distressing images.
Star Hobson was murdered when she was just 16 months old. Today, the two people who should have loved and cared for her, but instead were responsible for her death, were sentenced for their crimes.
And I knocked my cheek back as it got stuck to yours like glue or something.
This is Star with Savannah Brockhill, the woman who would later kill her. She was an amateur boxer with a violent temper, which she often took out on the toddler. She was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years in prison. The judge said she had shown no remorse. Star's mother, Frankie Smith, was jailed for 8 years for allowing her daughter's death. The judge said she played a significant role and it was something she will have to live with for the rest of her life.
Throughout her short life, Star was subjected to endless physical assaults and psychological harm. Instead of the love and protection, she experienced a world of humiliation, cruelty and pain.
Star was known to police and social services. Today, a family member gave us a video of Star with bruises. You may find this upsetting. Taken days before she died, it shows injuries to her nose, cheek and ear and led to her great-grandfather contacting social services.
I've never seen a child in my life with a black ear. And it was coming into my head that she'd been slapped, which caused it. And that brought concerns to me. They could have took her to the hospital, they could have got her checked out. And maybe all these injuries, what she had, would have come to light. I just feel let down by them.
Star, do you love your mums?
Parliament was today told the murder of this child should be accompanied by sadness and bewilderment that it was allowed to happen. The government has Bradford City Council in its sights over what went wrong. Danny Savage, BBC News, Bradford.
Women who were forced to give up their babies for adoption in the 1950s, 60s and 70s are among those due to give evidence to a parliamentary inquiry which got underway today. The hearing follows a series of BBC reports and will examine why thousands of pregnant unmarried women were pressured into giving up their babies. Our correspondent Duncan Kennedy has the full story.
These are some of the women who lost their babies through forced adoption, simply because they broke the taboo of getting pregnant out of wedlock. Today they welcome the news that a parliamentary committee has begun to examine their traumatic experience.
A great relief as much as anything, and gratitude that it's going ahead despite being long overdue.
It's a wrench to part from your baby, but this mother has decided it would be better off.
Hundreds of thousands of babies were taken from unmarried mothers for adoption in the 30 years after World War II. Today, following the BBC's reports, Parliament's Human Rights Committee began an unprecedented inquiry.
One of the most fundamental human rights is the right to family life. And one of the most fundamental parts of family life is the right of a child to be with its mother and the right of the mother to be with her child.
The mothers say they were pressured by parents, social workers, midwives and churches into handing over their babies, and say they hope the inquiry will recommend a government apology.
It's just amazing that we finally got this far after over a decade even of trying to be heard, trying to get our voices out there.
We want an apology because we deserve it. We have been wronged. There are thousands of us who have lived with shame and guilt, and it is time that that stopped.
The birth mothers and adopted children will give their evidence to the inquiry next year, after what they say has been a lifetime of shame and guilt that should never have been inflicted on them. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
A man who murdered 2 women in Kent more than 30 years ago and then decades later went on to sexually assault the bodies of more than 100 women and girls in hospital mortuaries has been told he will die in jail. David Fuller killed and then sexually assaulted Wendy Nell, who was 25, and Caroline Pierce, who was 20, in separate attacks in Tunbridge Wells in 1987. He was arrested in December last year thanks to advances in DNA techniques which linked him to the murders. Police discovered hard drives at his home on which he'd stored recordings of him abusing corpses at 2 hospitals in Kent, where he worked as an electrician. The TV personality Katie Price has avoided a prison sentence after admitting drink driving while disqualified and without insurance following a crash in September. She was given a 16-week suspended jail term at Crawley Magistrates Court. The judge told the former model that she'd been incredibly selfish and showed no concern for the lives of others when the crash happened. President Biden has travelled to the state of Kentucky to meet survivors of last week's powerful tornadoes. The president, who was visiting the town of Dawson Springs, 3/4 of which has been destroyed, has announced that the US federal government will cover the entire cost of 30 days of clear-up in the state. At least 74 people died. Now, the racing driver Lewis Hamilton has been knighted at Windsor Castle just days after controversially losing out on a record 8th Formula One title. Sir Lewis received the honour for services to motorsports from the Prince of Wales. This evening, the sports governing body, the FIA, has announced an inquiry into Sunday's race, saying the controversy around it is tarnishing the image of the championship. Meanwhile, Formula One's new world champion, Max Verstappen, has been celebrating his title with his Red Bull team at their factory in Milton Keynes. Our sports editor Dan Rowan has it all.
It may have been at a slower speed than usual, but Formula One's new world champion returned to a hero's welcome at his team's headquarters today. Max Verstappen able to celebrate with the entire staff at Red Bull's base in Milton Keynes. Later, the Dutch driver telling me how it felt to have realised a lifelong ambition.
Yeah, it's slowly sinking in, but also it's been very hectic all the way through, so I'm also pretty tired at the moment. Anything what will happen now is a bonus. Not much will change, but in the back of your mind you are a bit more relaxed because your big dream, your ultimate goal, you have achieved already.
Verstappen's victory over Lewis Hamilton in the season's deciding race in Abu Dhabi has divided the sport. Mercedes failing with 2 protests after the Dutchman was given the chance to claim the race and title in the final lap after a restart. So has the controversy tainted the success?
Not for me. I also don't think for the team. We raced when there was a green light, green flag, and we beat them on the track. When you look, I think, over the whole season, we had the most poles, most wins. We had our fair share of bad luck as well.
Mercedes have the option of appealing. They have until tomorrow evening to decide. Would you like them now just to stop this fight and accept the result?
It's difficult. I can't speak for them. I think, races should be won on the track. We will celebrate regardless, but, we at least won it on the track.
Sir Lewis Hamilton. Having missed out on a record 8th title, Hamilton, meanwhile, could at least celebrate receiving his knighthood today. Verstappen full of praise for the man who pushed him all the way.
It has been a real pleasure, fighting against it. Of course, we had our moments throughout the year, where we clashed, but I think we really respect each other because we have pushed each other to the limit.
Despite the fallout, Verstappen's victory marks a new era for a sport that's winning new fans. And aged just 24, there could be much more success to come. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Milton Keynes.
That's it. Now on BBC One, time for the news where you are. Have a very good night.